Then we can say, can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Yeah, then we can say the protest has become to its successful age when there's no casualties, there's nothing happen, and what we are protesting for, we have agreed that this thing is not going to favor us, and majority agree on that. And when we protest and we concur that this is the area that we are going to reach the equilibrium on this protest, and we peacefully make it happen, then I think protest could be successful in that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have something to say about the definition about successful movement, or maybe you would want to share an example, something in your country that you have seen as success, as a failure? All right. If not, then we could move to the second motion. And in here, we'd like to talk about media and social media. I think the main problems in reporting about social movements nowadays are mainly elite framing, where the protests are framed around a small group of people in a specific country, or episodic framing, and this happens when the media coverage is trying to be unbiased, so they just report whatever is happening at the second or at the day, with disregarding the past events and the history behind it. There's also a protesters versus police framing, which happens when the news are only talking about interactions, maybe even violent interactions between the police and the protesters. And also there's the highlighting of inappropriate samples of individual protesters, where you see very peaceful protests, but then you see the cameras only focusing on the people that are doing the harm, and they are destroying things. And there's also the last main problem, which is the lack of empathy for the oppressed, where you see the media again trying to be very unbiased. It falls into the loophole of lacking empathy to the people. So how do you think we could improve media coverage in protests? And in here we talk about the standard media, and then later we would discuss social media. Does anyone have something to say about how we could improve media coverage of protests?
All right, so Asma will come in here.
Yeah, please.
I mean, media, talking about media, and of course, in our generation, social media, I think it's a powerful tool. And most of these movements really depends on social media. And of course, you also have other networks that are also want to, pick on what is really actually happening on the ground, which unfortunately it only gets to be on the streets. They see what is happening on the street, like fighting and stuff, and then that's what they report. I think for a protest to be really successful, to have like the trust of the people, it's better that the protests need to be really, really organized in terms of having a good media plan in place, in terms of how to really leverage on the social media that we have at our disposal at this time, so that it can really create, put the narrative in a good context, so that it's not be just biased, let's only letting people see the, let's say, the violent side, if it gets to that extent. But at least once they have like a good media strategy behind it, of course, letting it be a low cost participation approach, whereby you can have even Facebook groups or organized groups on social media, Telegram, WhatsApp, that could really pick up the message. Of course, you have PR warehouse, or people that are really understand what it takes to present the ideas to the people, to the general public. It really makes the perception or your fight or your cause really easy to accept it, to be accepted by the general public at all. So I think that one needs to be really, really looked at, like a good team behind it, a media plan behind it, and then it could really go on a long way. And of course, the protest movement, get a chance to do the narration, as we've been seeing, like from yesterday. It's great that you tell your own story, the own way that you feel, not only just like once you're going to the streets, but then I think like there should be a series of things that could be done. Of course, engagements before going to the streets, but letting people really understand what you're fighting for, what is the clear message, and it will really help in terms of the traditional media also really understanding it and portraying your cause to the general public.
Thank you very much, Sam. I see that Lydia is raising her hand. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to connect this with the reading we had yesterday about the danger of one story, the one by Chimamanda. And I think social media actually provides quite a good platform to provide the other different perspectives, because I think, as we know, mainstream media is usually biased towards one side or the other, and we can clearly, for instance, see the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening, and you could see, if you wanted to watch about how all people are just breaking stuff and everything, then you'd go to Fox News, and if you wanted to see how Black Lives Matter was peaceful and was perfect, and they got, I don't know, they got what they wanted, then probably you'd go to CNN or that, like mainstream media usually takes one side of it. But I think for protesters, I think it would be really good to leverage on social media so that they can use social media to tell their story, to just show what exactly they're doing, what their aim is, and to communicate this. And this would be able to capture quite a lot of people, especially young people, because social media is a powerful tool. And I think for that, as Sam said, planning behind it is quite important. And it's quite important to leverage social media so that you can be able to use it to tell your story. Yeah. And just probably not let people be overtaken by the biases of mainstream media. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lydia. One other question that I wanted to throw in is, do you think there should be legal actions against biased and cheap media, per se? I mean, I see that a couple of people are raising their hands. I cannot see the names though.
Can I come in?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Mugavi. I just had a problem with my audio, but I wanted to also start with something small about the success, which I missed, because I've been engaging in activism, and I wanted to make some attempts, as Alan knows, here at the university, because I was believing that our leader, President Museveni, has overruled. And when I joined the university, I tried to gather and even meet with some students all over the country, and we started a group called FOC, it was Action for Change. And I would like to share this experience that when we organize a protest to overthrow or to end a 30 years dictatorship, we never achieved what we wanted to overthrow, but the discipline which was exhibited was something interesting and even what we would call a success, because majorly when people start protest, along the way they become violent, they can start breaking shops, trying to eat, and even sabotage the people who would join them. So the success of any kind of protest, its ability to even attract and inspire other people to join it. The timeline may not be given, it may take even 1-2 years, but then the discipline is key, and even the element of non-violence. I would believe like that. For example, some of us were inspired by the Arab Spring in 2011, and we believe that in Uganda we would also copy and paste something. But when we went into the organization, we lacked the infrastructure to build that momentum which could end and even stand against the military dictatorship. But we were successful in such a way that all over the campuses and university, students started getting strong and motivated even to speak about corruption, to speak about other things. However, the struggle to get now it's a 30, it's going to 40 years dictatorship is still continuing. So that's what I had. But also, how have we been using the media? There is also a narrative we have to see. For example, in Uganda, the media is always corrupted because we have to pay the media if you want its attention, because the media can exonerate you if you disappear, if you get arrested, and even sometime the security and the tyranny soldiers may fear to beat you. But we should also look at the element whereas in some countries, like our country in Uganda, the media is compromised. You call them and you say, we are going to have a press conference, and immediately they will alert the security group and you will end up being arrested. But I believe the social media has changed the trend, because today young people are able to go with their phone, smartphone, and even throw it all over the world so that they can see the protests. So I believe that's the media, but also the training is required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mugabe. I see Ishaya raising his hand. Do you want to speak? Your stage is yours.
I think Samuel and Mugabe have said the main point that I wanted to emphasize on the media issue. Though media serves as the most speedy way of communication these days, and is the most accelerated way of getting an information all through. So protests can be peaceful through media if only we can secure our media information through some kind of techniques whereby some influencer or some bad people cannot hack in and begin to say something contrary to what we have agreed on, and that will serve as a point whereby there's some kind of in that group. When we are protesting through media, we should be mindful of what we are saying, because those that we are protesting against are actually looking for way past the plan of an enemy. When they see something good is taking place, they don't just want to see that take place in a peaceful way, but they have to look for their way out in order to cause a storm for that thing not to go smoothly. So protest through media is one of the successful ways that we can able to do, if we can have the security guiding that platform. I think this is all I have to say, added to Mugabe and Samuel.
Thank you very much. I see that someone has wrote something to answer this question in the chat, and it's learn more. And it says, to improve coverage, you can look for prominent people with many followers, like in Zimbabwe. If you are to ask people like Hopewell to assist you, and if he buy your idea, then you can improve your coverage. Thank you very much for your input. I think we've all so far. Yeah, I see that that Alan is raising his hand. Do you want to speak?
Well, thank you so much. Just probably to just add on what what is already happening down here in the discussion. Maybe to just give you a narrative of what social media can be able to do. Because given an example of what we've so far had, say in the last couple of months in Uganda, there was an hashtag of we are removing a dictator, and it was a fierce one that prompted even the government to come to a point where they had to shut down social media, because they wouldn't come to a point where they were able to handle such kind of momentum that was being built up. And ideally, if they didn't come up with such kind of interventions, I don't think probably maybe this government will be the one in power currently, given what was happening at the time. But then you discover most of the things that I would call successful interventions that were able to sustain the protests was basically that the principles that were part of these protests mainly had, I would say, secure kind of network connections that had to be virtually connected out of Uganda, out of Africa, for them to be able to even sustain that kind of coverage. And if you look at the entire protest and you look at what so happened, you would get live updates about whatever that was happening in the protest. And I mean, this helped to propel the protest further. However, like, I mean, some of the things that I think can't happen even to the common people down here is the element that they can have the financial muscle, that they can own up some of these channels, like, I mean, individually. But I mean, one of the things that unfortunately has been happening, one of the things that was quite one of to an advantage was, I mean, people that had so many followers were the people that were holding most of the channels that were propelling the protest. But then you discover that in the sequence of time, most of these people's accounts would be deleted. I mean, someone wakes up in the morning when they had, I mean, thousands of followers, and the next day they're unable to access their social media channels. And I mean, that's one of the ways that, I mean, the government came into, in a way, try to shut down a particular kind of protest. So I think what the media can do, or if there is any improvement, I think even the people that own up these channels, maybe to the people that, I mean, out of even the African continent, probably if they can provide room for, I mean, people that have this particular social media accounts, I mean, that's a kind of advantage that no one can at any one point be able to say delete and, you know, try to, I mean, castrate the kind of effort someone puts into this kind of project. And I think that can go a long way in terms of, I mean, having issues being worked on. I would probably maybe end by saying, out of some of the things that came out of the protest, right now you can see that the composition of what the government is now is, I mean, there have been so many policies that have now engaged the youth. I sit on one of the panels that actually came out of the high, I mean, protests that have been here, and have been pushing the government to engage the young people. And so they have been trying to engage us. We are not yet to the level that we are really satisfied about a bit of engagement. But at least you can see, I mean, light at the end of the tunnel that, I mean, these protests are doing great and great, I mean, amounts of privilege for the young people, for our voices to be heard. And I mean, that wouldn't be the case if, say, this kind of platform weren't in place. I can probably maybe end it there for now, and maybe I can come in at some other point. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alan. I think from everyone that spoke right now, we kind of heard a lot of you praise social media and disregard a bit the standard media, and because it's being unbiased most of the time, and the government in a lot of country has a lot of control over it. And we heard also from Alan that there are also flaws and loopholes also in social media. So the next question would be, can social media create a destruction instead of building movements? Because we've seen with a lot of movement throughout the world, and also especially throughout Africa, that social media has played a really big role. But can it be the opposite? Can it create a distraction, and can it be more harmful than good? Okay, I see that Ishaya is.
Yeah, I'm the one. Yeah, I say thank you for that question, and it is very important. It applies to Uganda.
I'm sorry, Mugabe. I think Ishaya has rose his hand first. So maybe we give him the floor, and then you're gonna be next.
No, he can continue. I have no problem with that.
Okay, go ahead then, Mugabe.
Okay, thank you very much for that important question. I think what you've asked is what is happening, what happened in Uganda. You know, in 2011, we had Walk to Work. The social media was not so much a hype. Very few people had this phone and social media. But then, if you compare the 2020 protests, 2019, 2020, you could see the effect of social media. In 2011, people were not sitting at home. Many could join the protest and the road sitting. But in 2019, 2020 in Uganda, many people could go with their phone on social media and then sit wherever they are and then start say, oh yeah, continue. And then along the way, they got used to taking selfie and taking even some kind of eating somewhere, and then it became a social media, but then without any impact. And what happened? The government got the solution and said, now, if we switch off the internet, and immediately they switched off the internet, the whole country became cold and silent. And that's where the protests of 2019, 2011, Bobby Wine ended. So I believe there must be a balance between having the physical presence, demanding, raising placard, and even speaking, and also having the media, social activists also doing their work. So there is still some gap between how should we balance the social media and then the physical presence. Many activists in Uganda now have resorted to having very big number of followers on social media and even lack the impact to influence them to be able to go to the streets and then join the rest. So I think that's very interesting if you look at what is happening to Uganda and the Ugandan narrative.
Thank you very much, Mugabe. I see that someone has wrote some input in the chat, and it reads about distraction. One of the struggles with social media is the digital divide. In the case of Zimbabwe, most of say youth are in rural areas where network and gadgets are a challenge. So most hashtags are pushed by few people in towns without huge impact. Yeah. Does anybody else want?
Yeah, I will come in there. So yeah, basically, I mean, social media is great. Of course, it can also cause distraction if you're not really using it well, or you're not really speaking to the right facts. But then I believe that the advantage outweighs the distractions that we can actually find around, because like, think about it also. I mean, I know the digital divide in Africa really is wide, and of course, you cannot really try to push this movement ahead. But then that's why it's also very good that once you're building this network, you actually think of building a network not only within your country, not only within your region, but also like, you know, connect with other people globally that could also push the message across, so that even if your side is cut off, your internet is cut off, but of course you can also have like international response that could also be putting pressure back on the government or on the system, so that you can make sure that things are really working. So that is one aspect I'm actually looking at, is that yes, then it can really create a good impact. Of course, thinking about also this corona situation, once you cannot just easily go on the street just to, you know, hold placards and stuff. Social media became a very, very great tool, and of course it still is, in terms of mobilizing people to really push out things, information on the street. Presently in Ghana, this is the challenge that we have. We have this Fix the Country Now movement, which is been erupting from the past 2 months, I would say, because of course youth and the general public is demanding for more infrastructures, because the roads are actually getting bad. Actually, during the last election, politicians started to, you know, do some shabby works just to allow people to vote for them. But like just after the elections, things have stalled. Nothing is going on well. So like people have started like Face the Country Now movement, which is actually every time online, and it's really, really pushing the government to now coming out to talk about, okay, what are the real plans that they have that they want to do for the country, for the youth, in terms of unemployment, in terms of fixing the roads, in terms of, you know, providing some basic amenities that is really, really necessary for the people and for the citizenry to thrive in these communities. So I think it depends on how you use it, and of course, also combine it with the conventional approaches that we know already. Of course, strikes, demonstration, go on the streets, of course, peacefully. That's all what we always advocate for, to make sure that your protest gets to the right people, communicate clearly, and then to get the right result that you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam, for this insightful intervention. Please, if anyone is not speaking, please mute yourself. And if you raise your hand after and you spoke, please also lower your hand. I have one question for Sam. Since the session started a bit later, is it going for a bit longer?
Yeah, I think we can run through a bit longer, but I will confirm that with you within the next couple of minutes.
A couple of minutes, okay.
Yeah.
So I think the kind of last questions for tonight's session would be about, we've seen throughout the world that the themes of many protests are inequality, corruption, and political freedom mainly. So how much do you think are African movements inspired from the rest of the world, and how much do you think they're inspiring to the rest of the world? A lot of people think that Nuit Debout that happened in France, and Podemos that happened in Spain, and Black Lives Matter in the US were in a sense fueled and not fueled, but inspired by African movements. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think yes, always we need to get inspiration. And of course, like for me personally, Black Lives Matter kind of showed us a good way. Of course, not everything is perfect, but then at least right now, as things are going, they've really got, of course, justice for George Floyd. And of course, I think that's not the main issue, but of course, to have like justice reforms or police reforms, so that all this systematic racism could be checked. And I think it's on track on that. Through my reading, of course, I got to also to learn about Kenya, and there was also a protest over there. I think about my dress, my wear, or something like that, whereby the ladies were able to wear whatever they want, of course decent, so that they would not be sexually harassed by the general public. But like that was what was happening, and through their protest, my dress, my choice, they were able to have a success about that, in terms of they really communicated clearly on what they want. They wanted no harassment against any lady, any person who wears whatever she deems fit for her to go out. And I think those are like great inspirations. And when you look at the history, of course, they really, through the protest, they really demanded it, because it's in the Constitution. The Constitution provides this right, this provision for them, for each and every one, to wear what you want to wear. And that was great. So that is good. And I think Black Lives Matter also there. And for most of up and coming protests, I think these are great examples that we can look into, so that we can see the strategies. Of course, not only about what you want, the team behind, looking at also, how structured is it, because you don't want a situation where you're fighting for a cause, but then it's not really structured. Everyone is saying, oh, we want this, we want A, and the other group from the south of the country said, no, we don't want A, we are good with A, we want B. Then the other people on the north said, no, this is not what we want, but like we want actually Z. So it's really making it hard for the government to really say, hey guys, you're not really serious, like you're not coordinated, you don't have a common voice. So having a common voice is really great in terms of such ideas on such inspiration. So I think we should look at more of these examples, what makes them work, and also what makes them fail, and what are the good lessons that we could also implement for future protests in our various countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Does anyone else has a thought that they want to share about? Yeah, please go ahead.
I would like to add on something. Yeah, if you look at the most movements which have at least inspired the rest of the world, personally, I look at the Arab Spring. If you look at the Tahrir Square politically, it inspired many in Middle East, okay, mainly in Arab world, but even it inspired some countries in Balkan to start talking about what has happened in Egypt. However, the long-term outcome in Egypt, it's somehow regrettable. People are regretting because the revolution was hijacked. And then when we also look at 2010 in Tunisia, Mohamed Bouazizi, if I remember the name very well, that young youthful boy who went and I think started set himself ablaze, and then the Tunisian revolution started. It also inspired, and I remember when I went even to Netherlands in 2014, I found some social classes studying about it, how it started. But one which touches my heart was the one of Liberia. I'm not certain which year, but if you've been following, you remember in Liberia, there was groups of rebels who were fighting, but then the women mobilized themselves and formed a movement. And in this movement, the women campaigned to all the women all over Liberia not to have sex with their husbands until when the rebels get out and then settle into a dialogue. And it was very successful. And that's when the Taylor and others came out, and they went into the dialogue. Taylor ended up running away. So it was also one of the most interesting, at least movement in Africa, which was peaceful, but it also had an impact and it was spearheaded by women. But also in Uganda, we had recently, led by a pop star, Bobby Wine. It inspired many. We looked at all over the world, people joining and even demonstrating to free Bobby Wine. And it became a very big hashtag and so common. So I think those are some of the movements I looked around Africa, which had inspired the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I think we have 5 more minutes, so we have the time to tackle another question. And yeah, since Mugabe was talking about the Arab Spring, I'm actually from Tunisia, and I experienced the protest firsthand. And a lot of people, a lot of skeptics in Tunisia were thinking that these protests and the Arab Spring that first erupted in Tunisia were fueled by the West, and that it was not it was not fueled by poor people wanting change, but mainly it was manipulated by the West. So the last 2 questions that we'd be tackling this evening would be: how much is the international community, for example, the United Nations or Amnesty International, responsible for protests in Africa, and is the West more responsible for it? Do you think also that the international community should intervene in case of an African protest, or do you think that also the West should intervene per se? Yeah, please, someone, right. Was it Alan? Does anyone want to answer the question?
Yeah, if there is no one, because I don't know. Alan, are you coming?
Well,
okay.
You can go first.
Okay, let me just share something about that. I think
Please
should the international
community, we only have 3 minutes left.
Okay, should the international community intervene? I think the international community should intervene. However, the protest should remain owned, and even the objective of the local people must be reflected. I do believe, like one of the great teachers said, that injustice anywhere, the threat to justice everywhere. And if there is an injustice in Africa, it will automatically affect the international community. We shall see very many people running as refugees to Europe and others. And that's why it becomes an international concern. And then it should also pull others to see that if it's Africa, it should have some freedom, it should have peace, and should have also prosperity. You've talked about the Tunisia. I didn't know that because we never looked into all the nitty-gritties and the details. But I think all over the African protests, let it be Zimbabwe, let it be Uganda, we have been crying to the international community. And when it even delayed to respond, we see like what happened to Rwanda. If you remember in Rwanda, the 1994 genocide, the international community did not take a first role to intervene. And what happened? The genocide, almost 1 million of people getting butchered. And up to now, the international community is being blamed for what happened in Rwanda because it became a spectator rather than coming.
Thank you very much, Mugabe. I would like to give the word to other people before the session ends. But thank you very much. Does anyone want to add anything? Yeah, please go ahead, Lydia.
I think this idea of that protests are fueled by the West is usually a narrative that is put forward by, a lot of times it's put forward people who want to stifle or don't want the issues that are being protested about coming to light, and they want to divert the attention of the whole protest, which happens quite often, that when people are protesting, for instance, about human rights violations and things like that in Africa, there will always be a narrative in social media that these guys are being funded. And it happens quite often, for instance, in Kenya, when we have this activist Boniface Mwangi, when he starts protests and doing a lot of these things. And the first thing is that this guy is doing a show for the international community, for donors to get money. This guy is being funded by the West. And usually it just diverts attention of the whole protest. And I think that's usually one of the aims of this narrative of it's being fueled by the West. I'll leave it there to let others speak.
Thank you very much. I see also that that Alan is raising his hand. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. For this quite interactive discussion. Maybe to answer your question, I would say, surely the international community should intervene. However, just to probably maybe just try to a little bit drill on what Lydia has put forward. When you look at basically back here in Africa, the people that are in government that we are protesting against, always they'll come up with that narrative that, you're protesting because you're being funded by the West, and because the West has other intentions, ill intentions about our own people. Why don't we solve our own problems? And at times forget that most of the, reasons and concerns that we are putting across are mainly because we are affected as the people, that the common people, and the people that are suffering in the particular economy. I'll give you just an example as just wrapping up this in Uganda. When the protests were intense, the head of state came out and said, you the West, you're the people fueling this kind of protest. And then everyone was asking him, okay, can you just point out to a particular person that you really say is the person influencing this kind of protest? And he wouldn't be able to answer that. And even these were questions that are being raised by the international community, because every now and then used to throw it back to them. I think it's quite important if the international community can come and intervene, because some of the people that are in the international community are Africans that are maybe drawn there, that working in the diaspora, and in one way or the other, they are basically concerned about the issues that are surrounding, their African homelands. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for this fruitful discussion. It was, I see that someone wrote something in the chat. He said, okay. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Wonderful discussion. And I'm looking forward to having more sessions like this in the future. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being interactive. And let's all go back to the main session and where the rest of the program is happening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Asma.
Thank you very much, Asma.
Yeah, thank you so much, and everyone for the participation.
So please, you can move back to the plenary, and the breakout room is going to end. Get back to the plenary. Thank you.